When they see that, they'll go on Twitter and apologize for yelling at me. That's what they do. When they see the wrong, they apologize immediately. It's so nice. The internet always does.
You guys owe him an apology. Let's be real, okay? I expect it as soon as it's aired.
Event Leviathan is a great example of everything wrong with Brian Michael Bendis as a creator these days. It's exceptionally boring, paced atrociously, rarely pays off mysteries, the characterization is off 90% of the time, characters arrive randomly, and the dialogue is as bad as it gets in mainstream comics these days. Bendis-speak is real. It's damn real, people. And as his writing assignments pile up, it's getting worse each and every month. Superman is abysmal. Action Comics, once the good Bendis title, is virtually unreadable these days. Legion of Superheroes Millennium is the worst Big 2 comic I've read in all of 2019. And honestly, Event Leviathan isn't that far behind. Technically, this event series should have started out like gangbusters. Bendis' strong suit, if he even has one these days, is street-level heroes. For the first 3 issues, that's all this comic had, and it still sucked. We're now 4 issues into the story, and we have no clue who Leviathan is, or what he wants. Spoiler warning, we still don't know at the end of issue 5 either. I don't hear anyone talk about Event Leviathan now. People aren't even making fun of the terrible Bendis-speak anymore. This is an event book featuring Batman and Superman with what DC Comics believes is one of their 3 premier writing talents on it. And it only shipped 75,000 copies for the series debut. Sales numbers for issue 4 are in, and it dropped a whopping 33% to 50,000, which would be absolutely amazing numbers for a C-list character like Hawkman, but for a Bendis-led event series starring Batman and Superman, it's exceptionally embarrassing. When I finished reading Event Leviathan number 5, I asked myself, Wes, why does this comic even exist? And quite frankly, I'm still searching for an answer. Despite being in continuity, it has no effects on the DC universe. Batman, Detective Comics, and Batman and the Outsiders haven't mentioned the events in this story a single time. Hell, Bendis even stopped recognizing it in Action Comics a couple issues back. The writer of Event Leviathan doesn't even acknowledge this in-continuity story exists anymore. This is what I call an HWAT. Huge waste of time. I hope none of you are reading this comic because it completely sucks. Now let's get into all the unkempt details in today's comic book review. I've stated from the first issue that artist Alex Maleev isn't necessarily bad, but he is a terrible choice to be drawing superhero comics. And I'm 100% correct. The visuals in this series have steadily gotten worse as the action has ticked up. Although there's little action in this issue, the visuals still aren't up to snuff. In fairness to Maleev, it's hard to make adult characters standing around in spandex, talking in circles, look cool. But that is his problem, and not mine. He took the job knowing Brian Michael Bendis has a penchant for pages of endless drivel. It was on him as a professional artist to rise up to the challenge and make it work. He failed. The visuals in Event Leviathan have steadily regressed. Issue 5 is no different. I rate the art a below average 2 out of 5. Now the good news for Maleev is he probably isn't capable of creating visuals that rival the suctitude of Brian Michael Bendis' writing. He could draw Batman and Superman in stick figure form, and it would still be the best part of Event Leviathan. One of the big themes Bendis is pushing in this story is anyone can be Leviathan, but the way he pushes it is by having characters say it constantly. He's provided no actual evidence through story or action that Steve Trevor, Director Bones, Amanda Waller, Talia al Ghul, Maxwell Lord, Batgirl, Jimmy Olsen, Ra's al Ghul, Jason Todd, or Manhunter could actually be Leviathan. Monumental storytelling failure on Bendis' part. The story shockingly opens up with Lois Lane standing around talking with a group of detectives about who could be Leviathan. She's only been talking about this for about 90 pages now, so why change a good thing? This go around, the detectives are led by Zatanna, but you would never know by the dialogue. They inform Lois it's none of her suspects, which anyone with a brain already knew. Zatanna even says none of the suspects are Leviathan adjacent. I do enjoy Lois's response. None of them? Not Maxwell Lord? I really thought it was him. In Lois's defense, most of the internet thinks it's Maxwell as well. So I guess in Bendis' mind, this doesn't make Lois look like the furthest thing from the world's greatest investigative reporter, which it still does. Of course, they think it's her father, Sam Lane, which, if you've read the story up to now, it's clearly not. Zatanna's intro is priceless. Hi, Miss Lane. Zatanna, master of mystic arts. We've met a bunch of times, but it's okay if you don't remember. We're really not that close. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Lois knows you aren't that close if she can't even recall meeting you several times. Of course, in the interest of validating just how wonderful Lois is, Zatanna makes sure to let her know she's a huge fan before accusing her father of being Leviathan. In the previous issue, Lois stole the Batmobile to meet the new team of detectives. Keep in mind, this story is supposed to be happening in one single night. I'm not going to get into all the details why this is preposterous, but trust me, it is. Apparently, she stole the Batmobile so Batman would listen in on her and the new team of detectives. At least that's what Bruce is telling himself, so he doesn't go full Batman and deliver her the beating he gives most criminals. One of the things I really hate about Batman nowadays is how he's no longer the world's greatest detective. He's now the hero with the world's greatest automatic detective equipment. The Batmobile scans the team, and Bruce knows they're telling the truth. Or at least, they believe they're telling the truth. You can't make this sort of lameness up, people. Zatanna then teleports the team to Sam Lane's hospital room. There's some more terrible dialogue before one of Leviathan's agents shows up, and Sam shoots them again. We then move to the dumbest part of the story. That's right, it gets even more stupid from here. Superman arrives to confront Leviathan in Chicago while giving Plastic Man a piggyback ride. When he enters Leviathan's trap, Plastic is suddenly dead in his arms. I'm honestly not sure what happens here. I'm going to throw the blame on this to Maleev. He's just suddenly dead in his arms. Superman is depowered, and we learn Leviathan acquired this technology from Spiral, who created it to deal with Jonathan Kent's potentially bad puberty. I shit you not, Bendis wrote that. Leviathan tries to use the fact that Spiral had a John Kent bad puberty contingency plan to lure Superman into his web of lies. But Supes ain't having none of it. So Leviathan decides to take another, more clever approach. Before Leviathan can trick Superman into joining him, Batman and the original detectives depart the Batcave in an all-terrain war machine in search of answers. I will admit, Batman should retire the Batmobile and move to the all-terrain war machine full-time. It's actually a pretty decent name. Damian says, well, now I'm really suspicious of Lois Lane. Green Arrow retorts, well, that's goofy thinking, kid. Robin says, I'm very suspicious of you too, by the way. We get it, Bendis. Everyone is a suspect. The dialogue between the Question and Manhunter in this scene is so meta, it just might break the meta. What are you thinking, Manhunter? She responds, I'm thinking I get a question from the Question, and it's what are you thinking? I'm personally trying to find a way to say I have a bad feeling about this without sounding cliche, but I have a bad feeling about this. Jonathan Hickman claims Bendis had a huge influence on his writing. I personally just don't see it. Leviathan then delivers the words that will shake Superman to his very foundation and change the character forever. Not everything is your problem. This actually doesn't have anything to do with you. Why did Superman not think about this earlier? Of course he'll let you take over the world. It's not even his problem. Then Damian Wayne Robin has an epiphany that involves one of the passengers in the all-terrain war machine. Damian starts asking Manhunter about her lightsaber. He then learns she's not the first Manhunter. Apparently, Leviathan's technology has something to do with lightsabers, and Leviathan must be a previous Manhunter or someone with access to their Jedi technology. Just as he's getting to the bottom of this, Leviathan starts removing his mask that nobody cares about because Bendis forgot to make the character interesting, and apparently it's someone Superman is very familiar with. Just who exactly? You'll have to tune into next month's exciting finale of Event Leviathan. The all-terrain war machine isn't quite as sturdy as she looks and upended by Talia al Ghul and the Silencer, who basically just try to murder Batman and her son so they can help save the world from Leviathan. Batman asks the only appropriate question, how are you here? Because she sure as shit certainly should be in this story. She was already apprehended and locked up in Superman Leviathan Rising Special. Remember, this story is supposed to be taking place in one night. Brian Michael Bendis' storycraft keeps devolving this week. Most of his characters feel like caricatures. I honestly don't think he actually knows much of anything about a majority of the cast in this story. The dialogue is as poor as you'll find at the big two. I rate the characterization 1 out of 5. Believe it or not, the story picks up this week. Some things actually happened. So that was a nice change of pace. Of course, he still hasn't provided any answers or motivations for any of this mess. But who are we kidding? Bendis gonna Bendis. I rate the plot 1.5 out of 5. I still have no clue why this comic even exists. I guess it's probably so Bendis can say he wrote an event book with Batman and Superman, but it has zero effect on the DC universe as a whole or its flagship characters. Alex Maleev shouldn't be wasting his talents on superhero comics. The genre and artists don't suit each other in the least. The writing in this comic, especially the dialogue, are as bad as it gets in today's comic book industry. The fact that Dan Didio and Jim Lee keep putting Brian Michael Bendis in positions to embarrass himself and further deteriorate an already fading legacy speaks very low of their leadership abilities. Event Leviathan is a terrible series, and issue 5 is a terrible comic book. I rate it 1.5 out of 5 overall. Nobody should be reading this unless they find enjoyment in terrible dialogue. It literally provides nothing of value but a laugh at Bendis' expense. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.